Hi everyone, welcome to Marketing Science Essentials course. In this training, we'll be covering Introduction to Measurement Methodologies, which is the first part of the course designed to help you prepare for the Marketing Science certification exam. My name is Igor. I'm a business education training partner at Facebook Blueprint, and it's a pleasure to deliver this session for you today. This session has three sections: business goals and KPIs, existing data and data sources, and an introduction to the measurement toolkit. In the first section, we explore the fundamental relationship between a business goal, the KPIs for that goal, and the metrics to measure that KPI. As a measurement professional, it's your responsibility to align the measurement or analysis to the primary business goal. If you don't do this upfront, it can lead to misinformed action and wasted efforts. In the second section, Inventory Data Sources, we examine the types of data you'll use and the data sources necessary to inform your analysis. We look at both Facebook and off-Facebook data. And finally, we introduce different measurement methodologies, when to use them, and what are their limitations. For the purpose of this training, we define marketing science as the robust use of data to make better marketing decisions that are based on data and science. Marketing science extends beyond Facebook and encompasses more than just one single tool you might use. Let's examine the different parts of the sentence more closely. Use of data, the collection, measurement, analysis, and application of data. Better marketing decisions. To make better decisions with data, you have to clearly define what questions you want the data to answer in your analysis. For example, do you want to understand who your audience is for a campaign, or do you hope to determine which creative to use in a particular region? Or perhaps you simply need to understand whether your ad spend on a particular platform has led to an increase in sales or conversions. If you don't know what question you want to answer, you may not be able to determine what hypothesis your analysis or experiment is meant to prove or disprove. In other words, you may find it difficult to offer a recommendation that would optimize your marketing. Let's get into our first section, business goals and KPIs. In this section, we explore the critical groundwork that goes into a successful analysis. Specifically, we cover how to establish SMART goals and determine which KPIs and metrics align with your business goal. Let's look at the Facebook philosophy on measurement. In short, measurement is a journey. It's key to test and learn in order to guide your clients to more effective marketing. First, focus on the right metrics. With a multitude of metrics to track, both on and off Facebook, it's critical that you use those that align with your business goals. From there, try to understand the incremental value that Facebook generates for your clients. Use this knowledge to make Facebook work harder for your clients. In other words, you want to feel confident that your current strategy is optimal. If you've successfully optimized performance, you can determine how Facebook fits into the broader media mix. This basis can guide the total media spend with better data, which can ultimately enhance your marketing overall. Let's now talk about how to focus on the right metrics, which starts with your business goal. Without clearly defined business goals, it's difficult to determine whether the metrics that you focused on for your analysis or experiment are the right ones. If we think about this as a step-by-step process, it starts with your business goal, then KPIs, and then metrics. First, we should ensure that our business goals are SMART goals. We'll explore this in more detail in a moment, but in summary, SMART goals are specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. Once you define your SMART goal, you can determine the KPIs and metrics to measure that goal. Key performance indicators, or KPIs, are the measurable values that help you assess whether you're on track to reach or already reached your business goal. KPIs offer analysts and stakeholders a common language to define success. Metrics are the quantifiable variables that make your KPI measurable with data. It's easy to confuse KPIs and metrics, but there is an important distinction. All KPIs are metrics, but not all metrics are KPIs. With so many potential metrics, we want to ensure the metrics we track actually measure our business results. It's important to know that businesses often have primary and secondary KPIs for their goals. For example, a primary business goal may be to increase online sales, and the secondary goal may be to increase the lifetime value of customers. The primary KPI would be the number of online sales, and the secondary KPI would be the average lifetime value of customers. The primary KPI is linked to the ultimate business goal, and the secondary KPI indicates how well the business is performing. People analyze and review secondary KPIs because those metrics are important to the desired outcomes. They also offer context. With more measurement tools available in the marketing space, you can easily generate KPIs. However, KPIs that don't align with your primary business goal or any goal for that matter can easily mislead you. Misalignment results in the improper or incorrect measurement of the desired business outcome. This means that KPI doesn't help the business reach its goals. As a result, it's important to clearly align the primary KPI with the primary business goal and to acknowledge secondary KPIs as useful context. In this session, we'll work with a fictional company called Axion Electronics. Axion is a medium-sized electronics manufacturer based in the UK that makes television and other electronics. Its patented TV technology is arguably the best in the market, but the price point is high and awareness is low. Likewise, other manufacturers with greater resources disrupt consumer consideration with inferior features that they market as premium and state-of-the-art. Axion recently launched a revolutionary new TV. The marketing team identified their audience for the new product as men aged 24 to 45 who live in the UK, France, or Brazil and are home theatre enthusiasts, or HTEs. The team's business goal is to increase brand awareness for this new product, so let's turn this into a smart business goal. As an analyst, the measurement should align with the strategic initiative of the business. You should know that the data or experiments can't measure, so it's critical for both you and your client to clearly define the goals at the start of your assessment and ensure that they meet all the SMART criteria. A SMART goal here will look like this: increase awareness among HTEs by 5 points in Q1. This goal is both specific and measurable. Axion is a fictional brand, but let's assume the goal is attainable. The team's objective is to increase awareness, so it is relevant as well. Lastly, they want results in Q1, so it's definitely time-bound. Now, let's look at the team's KPI and the metrics that they will use. Their SMART goal is to increase awareness of their new TV among HTEs by 5 points in Q1. Their KPI is the percentage increase in brand awareness among HTEs, and the metrics that they use to measure their KPI will be estimated ad recall leads. So let's try another business goal. Assume that Axion's team wants to see a 20% increase in sales by the end of Q2. How would you turn this business goal of increase their TV sales into a smart business goal? And what are the KPIs for the goal, and what metrics should we use to measure that KPIs? Let's take a look at what would be the correct approach to this. First of all, we'll be talking about increasing sales for their new TV by 20% by the end of Q2, because it's specific and it is relevant only for the new product. It calls for a 20% increase in sales, so it's measurable as well. We assume it's attainable, and lastly, it's relevant and time-bound. The KPI for this is the percentage increase in sales, and to determine if they achieve the KPI and reach the goal of a 20% increase in sales by the end of Q2, you need the number of units they sold in Q1 and Q2. Let's talk a little more about metrics, because the metrics you choose should align with your business goals, just like KPIs do. Engagement metrics such as likes or shares may therefore not be the metrics to focus on when you measure paid advertising. And here is why. While likes, shares, and comments may be useful for organic strategies, those types of interaction don't necessarily indicate success for paid strategies because they may not align with real business outcomes. For example, people who like or comment on a paid ad may be less likely to purchase or convert. This means that an ad with low engagement doesn't necessarily mean that the ad was ineffective. Similarly, you shouldn't necessarily devalue people who don't engage with your ads. That is why it's important to not rely on engagement metrics and instead choose the metrics that matter most to your business goals. Here are some Facebook metrics that you may want to focus on. If we start with upper funnel brand metrics, then for awareness, you may want to focus on metrics such as ad recall or incremental reach. For consideration, you could perhaps focus on page views or content downloads. For commitment, website visits, signups, or app events may be valuable. And for action, you could measure action intent or conversions. Not all of these are important to each advertising campaign. Select a KPI that fits the objective of your advertising. If an organization needs to increase awareness, an increase on video views may not be a sign of success, but an increase in ad recall is. In short, choose metrics that matter. Now let's put some of this information into the context of the exam. Here is a good example of the types of questions that you may see on the test. The marketing team for a financial services company plans to launch a month-long Facebook campaign to promote its new credit card. The audience strategy is to reach people who previously applied for one of the other cards the company currently offers but didn't get approved. The team sets up the campaign with a single-cell conversion lift test to determine how effectively the campaign gets people to apply. After the campaign concludes, they'd like a report that highlights the total budget spent and number of approved applications. And the correct answer here would be D. The KPI should be the number of submitted applications. And see, the campaign goal is to generate applications for the new credit card. The metric that the team should focus on is the number of applications that people submitted. It's also important to recognize that the metrics that you use to measure KPIs will vary by channel. For example, you may find that you choose KPIs and metrics that align to a business goal on one platform, but due to a variation in measurement solutions across channels, that KPI isn't measurable with the same accuracy on another channel. Each channel has its own measurement limitations, and those limitations can impact the indicators that you track with a particular KPI. Let's look at 3 examples. This isn't a complete list. Imagine that your marketing objective is to increase awareness of an upcoming holiday sale, and your client currently has planned campaigns on multiple platforms. They want to measure estimated ad recall for Facebook, impressions for search engine marketing, and views for online video and reach for TV. If the objective is to increase consideration for a new product, then your client can use click-through rates on social media, search engines, and online video. However, they might not have a metric that they can use to measure campaign effectiveness for the consideration objective with television. Similarly, if the objective is to increase the number of app installs, your clients might consider conversions for paid social and search engines. However, depending on the platform, they may not be able to measure the success of the online video campaign. They might not have a way to measure conversions for a TV campaign either. Ideally, the KPIs across channels are consistent, but be aware that the metrics that you use to measure campaign success across different channels may vary to a great degree. Now, Storks is a fictional online baby emporium that offers high-quality products, including toys, non-GMO organic formulas, eco-friendly diapers, and fragrance-free wipes, as well as laundry detergents to young parents. And the company recently launched a complimentary service called Telenanny, which gives parents and the expert opinion of live childcare experts through their app and website. And the audience is new parents between aged 24 and 42 who live in the United States. In Q2, the team plans to run a traffic campaign across 3 channels: Facebook, search, and online video. They designed the campaign to direct people to the Telenanny page, which features the value proposition. A successful campaign would send 100,000 people to the page. Their SMART goal is to direct 100,000 people to the Telenanny page by end of Q2 to increase consideration. And to do this, the team plans to direct people to the Telenanny page. Based on this information, identify the KPI they can measure and determine which metric they can use for each platform to confirm success. Let's try to think about the KPIs and metrics, and let's think about what would you use for this particular brand. And here are the answers that the team wrote. Their SMART goal is to direct 100,000 people to the Telenanny page by end of Q2 to increase consideration. And their KPI would be the number of people who visit the Telenanny page, and the metric for each channel would be the click-through rate. Before we move on to the next chapter, let's review what we've just learned. SMART goals are specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. When you choose your KPIs and metrics, make sure they align to your primary goal. You should also avoid engagement metrics for paid advertising and focus on metrics that measure real business outcomes. Lastly, remember that measurable metrics may vary across media channels. Now that you know what the SMART goal is and the KPIs and metrics you want to use in your analysis, you need to ensure you have the capabilities to accurately track these metrics. Let's begin our next section for this day, inventory data sources. We'll first discuss Facebook data sources such as the Pixel SDK or offline conversions tool. Then we'll talk about some basic principles about data you should know for the exam. Specifically, we'll explain how to identify and address abnormalities in data such as missing data or outliers. Lastly, we'll learn how to identify and reconcile differences in granularity across datasets so that the two comparable datasets have the same level of detail. For example, if one dataset contains the number of hours a person spends on their mobile device per day and another dataset contains the number of minutes a person spends on their mobile device per day, you need to reconcile the comparisons across datasets for your entire analysis. Now that we are able to define our business goal and KPIs, let's discuss data and data sources. An effective data strategy uses a combination of tools to get an accurate view of performance, whether it's campaign performance, sales performance, or otherwise. It helps us formulate hypotheses, derive insights, and make recommendations. On Facebook, the data that you are able to include in your analysis often depends on which data sources your clients or your business has implemented previously. The data and data sources you choose should depend on the KPIs that you would like to measure. To assess your data strategy, ask yourself which data sources are best suited to your success metrics and which data sources are already in place, as well as what data do you have access to. There are two categories of data that we'll be discussing in this training: first-party data and third-party data. First-party data is the data that a business collects directly from its customers. This might include website activities and sales data. Third-party data is data that a party with no direct relationship with the user collects, such as a data management provider. Within these categories, there are four types of data that you can use for analysis: information about actions that people take on your website, in your mobile app, and in your physical stores. Data from Facebook campaign performance, such as what you would see in your ads manager. Data from tests or experiments. We will examine this in detail later on, but in short, this is the data that you obtain from your tests or experiments, such as the incremental impact of your campaign. And finally, it's data about marketing performance overall, such as what you would see in a marketing mix model. We'll also discuss this more a bit later in this training. So let's follow the steps of a typical customer journey to elaborate. Imagine that you want to buy a pair of shoes. You see the shoes on Instagram, search for them on your home computer, and then you see them again on an e-commerce app, and then see them again on your work computer before you see an ad for one last time on Facebook. After all of that, you might decide to buy them online or visit the offline store to buy them in person. Each of these touch points is a data point where a customer creates an intent signal. The measurement challenge is often how you capture and effectively analyze this. Data sources are tools that help you capture and analyze these signals. There are a few Facebook data sources that can help you capture the necessary data for your measurement analysis. The Facebook Pixel enables you to track whether people take certain actions on your website after they see your Facebook ads. You can also use it to create custom audiences or lookalike audiences for strategic targeting and to optimize campaign delivery to people likely to convert on your website. Conversions API is another tool to help you share website activity data with Facebook. But unlike the Pixel, which relies on browser cookies, Conversions API allows you to share data directly from your server rather than through a browser. It also respects the privacy choices of people who don't want their data to be shared externally. And current shifts in the regulatory landscape for data sharing and browser updates that block third-party cookies by default threaten to degrade ad performance. However, Conversions API can help you mitigate any losses that may occur as a result of all of these changes. The Facebook SDK enables you to track whether people take actions in your app after they see your Facebook ads. You can also use the SDK to create custom audiences or lookalike audiences and to optimize campaign delivery to people likely to convert within your app. With App Events API, you can send app events for measurement, targeting, and optimization without necessarily having to update or add app codes, as may be required when you implement the Facebook SDK. And lastly, the Offline Conversions API is a tool that enables you to track whether people take actions offline And this tool will share this hashed information directly from the client server with Facebook. You can also use the offline conversions API to create custom audiences or lookalike audiences for strategic targeting and to optimize campaign delivery to people likely to take action offline. When it comes to data sources, you should use these tools together. Think of them as a means of painting a picture that, when used together, can create the most value. For example, when you combine the pixel implementation with conversions API or advanced matching, that can help paint a full picture of your funnel. When you consider data from a variety of sources, it can help you better understand your customer's journey and ultimately to reach the right people at the right time. Let's see some examples of multiple data sources in use to paint that fuller picture of the customer journey. For all this, a fictional company is a well-known brick-and-mortar men's fashion retailer with more than 100 stores. The marketing team would like to encourage loyalty card holders to come into a store and make a purchase. They installed a pixel on their website and used the conversions API. To get a better sense of in-store purchases, they also implement the offline conversions API, and this enables them to better attribute success to their campaigns across all channels. Let's see another example. There is a fictional fashion company called Wind & Wool, which has brick-and-mortar stores and an online shop as well. And the team currently has a goal to increase their customer retention rate. And they installed a pixel on their website and set up the conversions API. They also have the Facebook SDK and app events on their app and the offline conversions API set up. With that, Wind & Wool can set up an ongoing dynamic ad for retargeting that shows complementary products to existing customers regardless of the channel that these customers use. Now let's try to put this into practice and let's take a look at another knowledge check. The marketing team for a car manufacturer creates a campaign with a business goal to increase purchases of a new model that they've just released. They want to conduct a test to determine the sales impact if they target their ads to shoppers who showed interest in a car that's similar to the new model from last season. Which data source does this manufacturer need to run this test? And the correct answer here is C. For the car manufacturer to conduct a test to determine the sales impact of targeting shoppers, they need the offline conversions API set up to capture the sales that occur at their physical store. For the exam, you should be comfortable with a few data basics. We won't examine them closely in this session, but I want to highlight some key concepts. The first concept is granularity, which refers to the high level of detail in the data set. A low level of granularity would be high-level data, while a high level of granularity would be more detailed analysis. The second concept is outliers in your data. Outliers refer to observations in a data set which appear to be inconsistent with the rest of the data set. The third concept is missing data. There are a number of ways to handle missing data, and the solution often depends on the case. The fourth concept is variables. A variable is a quantity or other piece of data that can assume different values. For our purposes, we will talk about independent and dependent variables. In marketing, it's very common to work with data across platforms that have different levels of granularity. Differences in data granularity may require reconciliation before you can conduct an analysis or make a recommendation. For example, you could see a difference in how time is tracked across your data sets, such as weeks versus days. In this case, you might choose to standardize the results of the data in the data sets to only show values as it relates to days. Another example could be mismatched in geographic, regional, or location data. One dataset might account for location by post or zip codes, while another dataset accounts for location by cities. You might choose to standardize the data to reflect post or zip codes only so you may conduct an analysis. We touched on this last example, but it's important to point out that different platforms can also count metrics differently. For example, one platform might count a video viewed after 2 seconds, while another platform counts it from the very start. Each of these cases requires some reconciliation in the data to perform an analysis. Outliers refer to an observation or subset of observations which appear to be inconsistent with the remainder of the set of data, such that it arouses suspicions that it was generated by a different mechanism. Outliers can have a different and very significant impact on a statistical analysis. For example, a statistical calculation based on sample average and variance can become distorted if the outlier isn't properly identified and addressed. With knowledge about the data, you might be able to quickly identify and explain the outlier. For example, on Black Friday, you might know that you had more than 10 times more impressions than usual. Without prior knowledge of the data, there are a number of other ways to identify outliers. This is by no means an exhaustive list, but you might also consider the use of histograms, box plots, ranges, or you can check averages with and without suspicious points to help you identify outliers. And with the outliers in your dataset identified, you must determine what to do about them. 4 potential ways you can address outliers are: firstly, analyze the data with and without the outliers to see if they change the outcome or interpretation of your analysis. If the sample size is large enough, the omission of an outlier may not impact the analysis. If the outlier affects the outcome of your analysis, you can use median analysis to replace the outliers. Secondly, you might also downweigh the outlier in your analysis with a weighted average instead of a normal average. This gives the outlier less weight in your analysis. The third approach is to adjust the sample size if it's large enough. You can use a trimmed mean, which is a method of averaging that removes a small percentage, such as for instance 5%, of the largest and smallest values before calculating the average. Alternatively, you can calculate the winterized mean. A winterized mean is calculated after replacing the highest and lowest values with the data points closest to them. And finally, you can remove all of the outliers. And removal of the outliers from your dataset is possible, but should only be done after a fair amount of consideration, especially if you don't know what caused the outlier. Like other data points in your analysis, outliers can also tell a story, and removal of them without much thought may skew your analysis. Also, outliers can be valuable data points because they can tell us something different from our central model. Don't just remove outliers, try to analyze them in the first place. Outliers give information about the data, so there might be a measurement mistake, or the data might have an unknown to analyst underlying distribution, so you should pay attention to that as well. The other thing that you may encounter in your analysis is missing data, which is data that is simply unavailable. There are quite a few ways to deal with missing data, and it can get really complicated depending on the case. For a simple example, let's look at the Axion sales data. Imagine that the price of the 50-inch LED TV differs across channels, and you can't just ask the client to look up the price. What are some potential ways to address this? So here there are a handful of ways to deal with missing values, and it would really depend on the analysis being done, the analytics tool, and access to more information. In this case, we could simply use the mean or median value to input the item price on a mobile app. In this case, we use the mean. What you do will depend on the information that will be accessible to you and the type of analysis that you run. And let's take a look at a more complex example here. And say Axion are trying to pull from marketing mix modeling reporting from their August 2019 campaign data. They want to understand how effective their campaigns are per region. And the analyst notices that some of the data fields have unknown in the region column. They run a pivot table to identify how many impressions are unknown, and they see that 2,423 impressions are unknown. The analyst wants these impressions to be included in the analysis, so they decide to redistribute the 2,423 impressions as a percentage of each region's total impressions. First, the analyst identifies the percentage of impressions achieved per region. Then, the analyst redistributes the unknown percentage of 1.044% among the other regions in proportion with what that region achieved. With the new percentage totals, the analyst can determine how much of the 2,432 unknown impressions should be distributed to each region. And the analyst then determines the new total impressions per region. This allows them to continue the analysis of the effectiveness of ad spend per region without omitting any data at all. Two other terms to familiarize yourself with in your analysis are independent and dependent variables. For anyone who has run experiments on our platforms before, you should be able to recognize them straight away. An independent variable is controllable. Marketers use independent variables such as delivery optimizations, campaign objectives, or the ad structure budget to test various marketing tactics. Dependent variables or outcome variables are the variables that change depending on manipulation of the independent variable. So for example, dependent variables can be results, could be reach, impressions, or cost per results. Other dependent variables generally are sales, average transaction size, or new customer leads. In a test, your dependent variable should be the variable aligned with your business goal. We'll discuss variables more when we cover testing, but for now, it's enough to be familiar with these two important concepts. Alright, let's do another quick review. First of all, an effective data strategy uses a combination of tools and data to formulate hypotheses, derive insights, and make recommendations. Secondly, abnormalities in data can impact your analysis, so have a plan to identify and address them as necessary. We looked here at some basic examples to explain some key concepts on the exam. Alright, so let's begin our last section of the day, Introduction to Measurement Methodologies. And in this section, we will first of all explore experimental and observational measurement methods. And then we will define incrementality, which is a core aspect of measurement at Facebook. And last, we'll compare different types of experimental measurement methods. Marketers would like to understand if their ads are, to extent, responsible for sales, and they use different measurement methods to try to answer this question. And these methods fall into two large categories: observational and experimental. When researchers collect data to infer insights based on the data, this is the observational methods. The researcher has no control over the subjects or the variables. In advertising, this means that the researcher observes the effect an ad has on sales, for instance, or conversions, with no influence over who has or hasn't been exposed to the ads. And marketers may rely on observational methods because they didn't have the resources or foresight to use an experiment. Alternatively, when researchers intentionally apply treatments to subjects in a controlled environment and then observe the effects of those treatments, this is the experimental methods. Both methods compare exposed and unexposed groups, but in the observational methods, there is no guarantee that the groups are equal on all attributes. In the experimental methods, groups are typically equal on all attributes, not just ads. And these attributes may include certain traits, such as age or gender. Observational methods offer marketers less control, which makes it a lot more difficult to use the data to derive insights on causal effects. After an ad campaign is complete, researchers can attempt to measure a causal effect on the desired results with data they've collected throughout the campaign. For various reasons, some people might have seen an ad while others haven't. Maybe they didn't scroll far enough on a page to see it. Maybe they weren't in the target audience, or they haven't browsed the internet lately. In an experiment though, marketers can expose a group of people to an ad while another group will function as a control group. And the researchers can then measure the effects after the campaign concludes. A well-designed experiment randomly assigns who sees an ad and who doesn't, and that way marketers can gain insights about the effect of an ad on sales based on the difference between the exposed and unexposed groups. In this training, we don't go into detail on observational methods. However, we do have an online course that you can take to learn more about observational methods. Generally, you can run 3 types of tests on Facebook. First, there is an A/B test. An A/B test splits audiences into randomized and mutually exclusive groups, which enables you to conduct experiments that compare multiple ad sets. Alternatively, there are randomized control trials, or RCTs, that you can run. We have 2 types of RCTs on Facebook: brand lift and conversion lift. RCTs introduce a treatment, study the effects, and determine the causal impact the treatment had to test a hypothesis. In other words, it measures the incremental impact of your ad. Let's first discuss A/B tests. A/B tests enable you to test different versions of your ads against each other, so you understand which elements achieve the best performance based on your current attribution settings. This test is ideal for businesses that just want to learn which tactics work best to optimize future campaigns. In general, we recommend an A/B test for day-to-day tactical optimizations. Let's review quickly how this works. A/B test divide your audience into random, non-overlapping groups, test group 1 and test group 2 in this case. And each group sees ads that are identical in pretty much every single aspect except for one distinct difference or variable. And the results of the test identify which is the winning ad set and which variable performed better. With an A/B test, you have a few options for the independent variables that you can include in your test. Okay, so first of all, you have audiences. So you can test your ad against two different audiences. For example, an audience of men and women ages 18 to 25 versus an audience of men and women ages 26 to 35. You can also test creatives. So you can test different images or creative elements against the same audience. With placements, you can test different ad placements or test your typical placement selections against automatic placements. In terms of delivery optimization, you can test different delivery optimizations. You can also test different structures of your ad budgets, and you can test different campaign objectives to find the best one for you. Let's see another example. Let's imagine that Lalo is a beauty and personal care brand focused on crafting skincare and makeup products. Its marketing team is working on a campaign to introduce a new lipstick line. The team's campaign focuses on traffic and uses single image ads to show the new lipsticks and encourage people to learn about them. The team has two different images they believe could work for their ads, so they conduct an A/B test to help them decide between the two images. They create an A and a B version of the ads, and both versions are the same except for the image. The results from the A/B test will show version B as the winner with more results and a lower cost per result. So the Lalo team uses that ad for the rest of the campaign. A/B tests enable you to test multiple campaign strategies against one another. However, some A/B tests don't include control groups, only randomized test groups. In this case, they don't measure causality or the incremental value of a strategy. In that case, the A/B test only identifies correlation, not causation. Here comes another knowledge check. As usual, you can see the question on the left side and potential answers on the right side. So the marketers for an activewear e-commerce brands would like to assess how much of their advertising budgets should be spent on retargeting previous buyers versus targeting ads to people who visited their website but didn't make a purchase. They need to measure the proportion of sales each targeting strategy generates to learn which generates the largest proportion of additional sales. They pause their usual campaigns and set up an A/B test with two ad sets, both optimized for purchases. The only difference is the targeting strategy. The team runs ad sets for 7 days, and the A/B test results are based on attributed conversions with a last touch attribution model to identify the winning strategy. This measurement approach doesn't accurately measure causality. What's causing this measurement issue? And the correct answer here would be C. The test needs to run randomized tests and control groups because an A/B test doesn't measure causality. So instead, the team should use an RCT or randomized control trial lift test to more accurately measure the causal impact of each strategy. Now let's discuss randomized control trials, brand lift, and conversion lift tests. To really understand how our randomized control trials work, you must first understand the concept of incrementality. The basis of good measurement is incrementality, which means the degree to which a measurement method can estimate the causal impact of an isolated marketing activity, such as seeing an ad. This looks at how much value came specifically from ads, which helps marketers understand the return on investments that their ads generate. To calculate lift in ad performance, incrementality measurement compares differences in outcomes between a group of people who've seen certain ads and a control group of people who haven't seen those ads. Here's an example. The teal area on the left indicates the conversions from people who didn't see your ads. The overlapping section in the middle indicates the conversions from people who saw your ad and who would have converted on their own. And those in light teal area on the right are the conversions that are directly caused by your Facebook ads. In randomized controlled trials, we work with a test group and a control group to measure the incremental impact of your campaign. The test group can see your ads, while the control group cannot. And the groups are completely randomized and identical, so any differences between the groups is purely the result of the Facebook campaign. The randomized yet identical groups help ensure factors such as TV commercial or any other outside factors do not contaminate the results of the test. And the differences in results between the two groups is the incremental impact of the campaign. Let's go into this step by step. First, to measure the impact of your ads, Facebook Leaf Solutions will randomize your audience into test and control groups with similar characteristics, as we just saw. The system will then deliver ads to the test group, and then it delivers a poll or tracks sales outcomes through data sources for both the test and control group. Finally, the system compares poll results or sales outcomes from the test group of people who saw your ads against the control group of people who didn't. And this would allow us to measure the incremental impact of your campaign. Now that we've discussed how randomized controlled trials work, let's explore the two randomized controlled trial tests that Facebook offers. We'll start with the brand lift test. Brand lift tests enable you to evaluate the brand lift your campaign is responsible for. And brand lift tests help you to prove a causal relationship between your advertising and the brand lift that you observe. If we look back to our RCT methodology in step 3, polls are delivered to both the test group and the control group. This is how polling in the test appears on the platform. You can ask people if they recall seeing your ads and up to 2 other questions of your choice. And this might involve brand favorability or product consideration. And each person in your test would receive just one question at a time in a random order. If someone is eligible to receive the poll question, the system shows it to them between 4 to 48 hours after ad delivery. So let's walk through how Axion, for instance, conducted their brand lift test. First, the Axion team creates the target audience for the campaign, and then Facebook divides the audience into random, non-overlapping groups. This randomization helps ensure the test is conducted fairly, so other factors won't skew their results. The ads can be delivered to the test group, but not the control group. Between 4 and 48 hours after the ad delivery occurs, Facebook polls the test and control group audiences by showing just one question at random to each person. Poll questions are about topics such as the ad recall, brand awareness, and message association. Facebook calculates lift by comparing the results in the test and control groups. Conversion lift tests are another form of randomized controlled trial tests that you will find among the Facebook experiment tools. Conversion lift tests help you evaluate the conversion lift that your campaign is responsible for. Conversion lift tests let you prove a causal relationship between your advertising and the conversion lift that you observe. It's important to note that you will need to have conversion data integrated in Ads Manager. So you should have the Facebook Pixel, Facebook SDK, Conversions API installed to provide a data signal. Let's think back to an overview of how RCTs work. They should look familiar. As opposed to polls in step 3, conversion lift tests will track sales outcomes. And the difference in sales between the test group and the control group would be your conversion lift. Let's use a hypothetical example to see why it's so important to look at incremental conversions through a conversion lift test. Here's a campaign for Axion. The team at Axion uses display ads to promote their kits. They are trying to buy 2 different audiences. One is a demographic target of adults aged 14 to 45. The other is a behavioral target of people interested in HD home theaters, which is a group of people who have actively researched home theater installations in the past 30 days. If you looked at each target audience, which one do you think is the better choice for increased marketing investment? I would assume that most of you would probably go for audience 2 because at a glance, audience 2 may look like the better option because of the high conversion rates. However, these two audiences actually each had a separate conversion lift test. And the example here showed that audience 1 is a lot more cost efficient, given the test and control outputs. We will know this by calculating the cost per incremental conversion, which is the total campaign spent divided by the number of incremental conversions. This gives us a $1 cost per incremental conversions for the demographic audience and $2 per incremental conversions for the behavioral audience. So in reality, audience number 1 is actually a lot more cost efficient. And that is why it's so important to conduct lift tests in general. They can help you understand how to make a lot more efficient strategic investment choices. Let's try to capture some of this knowledge through another exam practice test. An advertiser runs a conversion lift test on a new media platform. During discussions about measurements, the team from the media platform says that they can compare the conversion rates for the test group exposed to ads versus a pre-selected control group. The platform feels that their methodology is valid. What concern should the analyst have with the test design? All right, and the correct answer here would be A. Randomization is necessary for any valid experimental design. Congratulations to all of those who actually decided to go with option A. Okay, well, let's do another quick review. Randomization is absolutely essential to a well-designed experiment. A/B tests can help you compare different versions of ads against each other so you understand which elements achieve the best performance. Brand lift tests can help you determine whether your ad campaigns are increasing brand awareness. Conversion lift tests can help you understand the incremental impact that your ad campaigns have on conversions. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you found this material quite helpful. And before you leave, we'd like to better understand your experience and overall thoughts on the contents. So we invite you to complete the survey at the link above. Thank you so much in advance.